the 187th version of Science of the Southland, full episode, that is. I think this is actually the 200th individual episode that's gotten recorded according to our handy dandy podcast surfacing thing. So it's not really happy 200, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Look out for that in around the Super Bowl is when we're going to get close to 200. It is, what is it, October 15th. I've got Red Zone on one screen, our outline on another screen, Jake on another screen, and not Akshay with me because if I'm hosting, he's not here. But today we have Charles Gilley here, who is one of our newest writers, who's gonna probably do a lot on the softball and baseball front come the spring. But we wanted to have Charles on to introduce himself. So Charles, welcome to From the Rumble Seat. Welcome to Signs of the Southland.
Hey, thanks, Jack. I'm really happy to be here. Super excited to get started.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's great to see the tent grow bigger and especially with, as Jack said, baseball, softball. It's obviously something that there's a lot of interest in at Tech. And I don't know, when we were going to talk about this pre-show, I feel like I used to write 4, 5, 6 articles a weekend. It's just hard to, get to all the softball games and watch them. And, we want to make sure we're putting out good content, and, it helps to have talented people come aboard. So great to have you. We'll get to know Charles in just a little bit. I do want to throw in my intro bit that I forgot to write down, though, Jack.
Please.
And that was that I am notoriously not a runner. I'm more of a biker. And
I don't do the running either. I don't do that.
No.
I ran the base. I ran the bases, not the miles.
The Saturday morning, though, the one thing that will get me to run a race happened, though. The 5K on the 5th runway down at Hartsfield Jackson. You had to get there early. Had to get there pretty early. It was definitely dark basically the whole time we were there. But if anyone is Atlanta or remotely close to Atlanta based, it was a cool experience. I haven't done it in the past because it's been on football home game weekends, but with the bye, and we'll talk about the bye in a minute here too. But with football being off, it was cool. And of course, I'm a big plane guy too. So getting down there and checking that out was sweet. They got a lot of good giveaways. I mean, I didn't run particularly fast, but got a shirt and a medal, so that counts for something. But a good, well-organized Atlanta civic event, I'm a fan of those. So
that's awesome. I was at a different well-organized Atlanta civic event, technically a Decatur civic event. If you haven't been to a Oakhurst Porch Fest before, it is one of the best, not really underground things that happens, but it's all unofficial. It's all just super grassroots. This one dude runs it. And there's like 300 bands. They show up to people's porches. It's all planned out. And all afternoon, the least rainiest Saturday in the year, which according to the Farmer's Almanac is the 3rd Saturday in October.
Wow.
They do this. You just go to Oakhurst, walk around, don't drive because there's too many people to drive, but the roads are not closed because it's not an official City of Decatur event. I saw a Fugazi band. I saw a Kate Bush band. I saw another kind of just general, like a Decatur City Church had like free Sublime donuts. They made T-shirts for the whole thing. They brought their sound gear from their church and put it.
I was going to say, aren't they all the way out on Druid Hills Road, Jack?
They are.
That's not close to downtown.
No, it's not. This is not. They pulled out all the stops. They had posters and the T-shirt is amazing for an event with no official merch. They made some really good merch. It is one of the coolest events in Atlanta. And I think Inman Park does one now. Which
I was going to say, I think Virginia Highland does one too.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
When you said Porch Fest, I was like, oh, Virginia Highland, and then of course Inman Park Fest next spring is a good one to check out as well. But that's very official.
Yes, they do a more official version of that. But it was really nice to walk around. I saw like a fusion jazz band and everyone wore bowling shirts. It was really cool. Before we get into football talk, Charles. We have an audience here. People actually listen to this podcast, so we may as well get to know you some. Jake, I know you had some tailored questions here for our new friend.
Tailored questions. Yes, I didn't write them down because I'm full of surprises, shock, and delight. Anyways, Charles, so before we got on air, you're kind of going down the path of starting to tell us how you got involved with Georgia Tech. And that's something we always like to hear from people that are not just on the pod, but, people who are joining from the Rumble Seat. It's often I think a really good way to learn a lot more about the fan base and the people in it, to know how you got involved. Some people have parents, some people that go to the school, some people that just live nearby, some people like bees. I don't know. So yeah, how'd you find Georgia Tech? What's your story?
Yeah, so I grew up in rural South Georgia, And I can say very confidently that myself included, there was 3 Georgia Tech fans in the town that I was growing up in. We are definitely dominated from the school out east. And at some point during my childhood, it hit me that grown men barking is not okay. And I'm all for teams that are direct rivals to grown men that bark. And so here we go. We had
this is extremely logical so far. I love it.
So we had the school. I think they got cool colors, old gold and white, the navy blue. It's Georgia Tech. You know what? I'm a Georgia Tech guy now. I'm ready for all the heartbreak. Who's the coach? Paul Johnson. Great. They run the option. Perfect. Not really, but I don't care. I'm all in. I'm committed to being a Georgia Tech fan. And it was really cemented early on in my fanhood, that 2014 season, one that I'll really never forget. We got Harrison butt kicker, Justin Thomas, probably my favorite player of all time. So yeah, my Georgia Tech love started purely out of disdain for the University of Georgia.
I respect that. It's very honest of you to, come about it that way. And you beat me to the bus. I didn't get to Tech until fall 2016. So props there. So you're grew up rural South Georgia. You still down there? Do you get up to Atlanta all that much or anything like that?
Yeah. So I'm still living down in South Georgia. I went to college up at Kennesaw. I spent 3 years there in the Atlanta area. So I'd say I'm pretty familiar with it. And unfortunately, some of those driving tendencies and aggressiveness still comes out in my rural South Georgia town. And I got to check myself. I got to apologize because I kind of cut that person off a little hard, but I had to merge in. But okay, that was a little aggressive. Got to calm down a little bit. But yeah, so I'm pretty familiar with Atlanta and definitely looking forward to getting back up for the rest of the football season and definitely when baseball, softball season starts.
Well, between the 3 of us on this podcast and a couple other From the Rumble Seat guys, you could basically find at least one of us at every sporting event. So that invite is always open. Jack, you got anything? I've got one more, but I don't want to make this the Jake just interrogates Charles hour or anything like that.
No, let's go with what was there a standout moment in your head that if someone talks about best Tech moment for you, it doesn't have to be a sporting event. It's just something related to Tech. What's been your favorite moment so far in your fandom?
I will probably never forget my first Georgia Tech game, 2014. Coincidentally, it was against Clemson, and I was there with my mom, just kind of visiting campus a little bit and trying to. Mom was afraid of me driving in Atlanta, so she's like, "All right, you're going to drive up to Atlanta and you're going to drive around." And we went to the Tech Clemson game, and I just remember walking next to the stadium and seeing all the the houses and the signs and I don't know, just that game day atmosphere. I don't know. It gets stuck with me. And then to, kind of put the cherry on that day, we had seats at the 30-yard line, and I can't remember who caught the pick, but there was a pick six that was caught right in front of me, ran back for a touchdown. I don't know. I was smitten at that point with Georgia Tech and the athletics. And so, yeah.
I'm looking up this game because I want to find this out. Let's see here. That was October 10 against number 6 Clemson at the time. We kind of got killed, it seems like. In 2014, 2015.
Well, then I lied to you. Then my apologies. Here I go. First episode, already lying to you.
Yeah, 2015.
I thought we beat Clemson in 2016. Is that not the
2015?
It was Deshaun Watson was hurt, so he did not play in that game. He got hurt in that game.
He
tore his ACL, didn't he? I thought Tech won that game.
No, we lost 43-24.
What
game? Deshaun did play.
No.
No.
Unless you're thinking of 2014.
Yeah, 2014.
2014. 2015 was on the road, Jack.
Oh,
yeah, Jesus. November. Here we go. It's November 15th,
November
2014.
15th. Yes. Okay, got it here.
Yeah. It's 28-6.
28-26. Here we go. Yep. Oh, they rolled 3 guys out of quarterback for this game. Whoa, look at that. Okay, Cole Stout, Deshaun Watson, and Nick Schuessler. And Justin Thomas.
Jamal Golden. He's the one who caught the pick six right in front of me.
There we go.
That sounds about right.
Nice. Now we
got that Jack, up. You had me really confused there for a second. I was like, that was the last time we beat them at home, But is that the last time we beat them, period? It might be, because we didn't beat them in 2015.
That very well might be. I don't know off the top of my head. My first Tech game was also the Clemson one. I think it was a season or two earlier. I want to say it was when they were 8-0 or 6-0 or something coming into the game, and we beat them on like an 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter and just rolled the clock out that way. It was the most atypical, or just the Paul Johnsonist drive I've ever seen by far. It was delightful. I don't think we scored either. I think we just managed to run the clock for 8 minutes straight to end the game. It was beautiful stuff. So no, that's fantastic. Jake, do you want to do your last question?
No, I think that'll round us out well, Charles. As we openly admit on this podcast, we're also an Atlanta food podcast. If you have any recommendations for us, or if we're ever down in your neck of the woods, we're always open to that. But yeah, no, I think we covered things pretty well there. Jack, do you want to move on to football in the year of our Lord 2023?
Let's do some football in this year. I will not get our this year correct. Or incorrect, I should say. I am a mess right now. My God. Okay, well, here's the thing. Here's what I do know. We did not play football yesterday. This was our bye week. Came off after the crazy miracle in Miami Gardens, as I called it. Some people naming it other names. I think we had fumble. What was it? We had fumble Miami fumble as one, or Neil Miami Neil as other potential naming options, which I think were pretty funny.
If it didn't happen in the moment, I feel like you can't really just.
It was hard. There wasn't
make it happen. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So we're playing Boston College this week at the noon game at Bobby Dodd Stadium. They are also coming off a bye, so we will not have any rest advantage in this game, sadly. Just on a quick lookup of just checking the ACC website to see if they got any leaders and stuff. They got Thomas Castellanos, who's third in ACC rushing so far, and he's also fifth just in terms of total offensive yards all season in the ACC. Their guy Vinny Del Palma is fifth in tackles. And in the meantime, even with the week off, Haynes King is still third in passing. So that has not taken him, although there's been a lot of ACC teams off in the last week or so. So not much movement in terms of the statistical leaders and stuff like that. In just terms of a off week discussion point, we didn't really get a chance to talk much about this last week after the Miami game. We are 3-3. I know a lot of us basically predicted 6-6 on the website, or at least in our staff writers room. But this is definitely not the 3-3 we thought we would have, which I think is most notable. We thought one of Louisville or Syracuse, we might pull one of those out. Not going to get Louisville. Who knows about Syracuse still? We thought Bowling Green was in South Carolina State were going to be the easy ones, and then probably lose to Miami because it's on the road. And then it just doesn't. Then it's college football. It just doesn't happen that way. It doesn't go normally for you unless you are one of the best teams out there, and we are not.
Jack,
one of those
teams. You saying the easy ones every time. It kills me, man. Every time.
South Carolina State, man. Come on.
Yep. I'll give you South Carolina State. You can say the FCS ones.
The FCS.
But I will absolutely say 3-3 is. I'd be like, okay, great, cool. That means we either beat Wake or Miami or Ole Miss on the road, or Louisville in a pretty, kind of a lot of question marks first game. That being said, I think and you guys can color this in with any, clarity or exceptions that you want. I think people who are also like, well, if it wasn't for the Miami, we'd be 2-4. Or, oh, we should be 5-1 because we shouldn't have collapsed against Louisville and blah, blah, blah. Like that, the games are the games, right? Like, I don't know. I think to be hand-wringy about, not being better than 3-3 or being down on being 2-4. I don't know. I feel like this team, I don't want to say it's like the team we thought they were, right? But there's been some bright spots. There's been some, I don't want to say dark spots because that's a little, overly dramatic, I feel like. But I mean, if we've seen one thing from Brent Key's teams, it's that he wants to have them pretty disciplined, executing little things well, and playing hard to the end. And at least in that sense, I would say, maybe Wake Forest a little sloppy penalty wise, but they were executing stuff pretty well. Miami, they're playing hard to the end. I just don't think, and I think where this comes back around is in the last 6 games, and they're going to have some opportunities with UNC, Clemson, and UGI on the schedule, is they have an opportunity to put together a complete game. And I feel like that is certainly something we have not seen from this team yet.
Charles, what you think?
No, I think that's spot on. And as far as people talk about the whole hand rigging, like that's just college football. And with college football, you're going to get 12 different versions of a team. And so really you just kind of hope for the best. But personally, I'm happy with 3-3. I'm maybe not thrilled with really one of our losses, but it's all right. We're 3-3. The future at least looks better than it has in the last few seasons.
Yeah. I definitely think that's a fair place to be. I think Brent Key getting to the end of his first full season with 10 career wins is certainly within the realm of possibility. And that's kind of where I had my marker set out at the beginning of the year. And like we said, I think to kind of tail on to my own previous point, as I said, we'd get some opportunities against UNC, Clemson, and UGA to get some good wins. I think we kind of are through a lot of the coin flippier parts of the schedule. I feel like that's something that happens as the schedule solidifies. So the bye week really gives us an opportunity to say, hey, BC 3-3, some scrappiness, some loss to NIU. Maybe there's some shades of Georgia Tech-ish season
similarly
in there.
Similarly to how we had Ole Miss to a score in that fourth quarter, they had Florida State to a really tight game in that fourth quarter as well. So they've had the really mysterious loss and they almost did a thing in this game kind of game as well.
Yeah, I think and where I was going with that is, as this season goes along, we're learning more about, I'd say, every single one of these teams, which is a really kind of dumb comment now that I say it out loud. Of course, we're going to learn more about the teams. It's been 6 games. They're actually playing football. And then we're going to, of course, end the season and spend 40 weeks talking about the run up to the next season. Yes. But all that said, I don't know. I think I don't know. Going into Bowling Green, I allowed myself to feel confidence, how Jack sometimes seems to elude it all the time about these sporting events. And maybe I just need to I'm happy to be here.
My lack of confidence in the Braves in the playoffs went to Georgia Tech football, apparently. And that's resulted in various forms and fashions. We have alternated wins and losses every game of the schedule. Lost Louisville, beat South Carolina State, lost Ole Miss, and the pattern repeats itself. We are 1-1 against 17th ranked teams specifically. Ole Miss was 17th ranked when we lost to them, and we beat Miami when they were 17th ranked. So some fun tidbits there. North Carolina could be maybe by the time we play them. Who knows? So it could.
Well, they're off this week.
They're off this week, so we'll fight.
They play UVA. I lied.
UVA. Okay, they play UVA.
Yeah,
all
my
right.
bad.
Common opponent there with us. We'll play them after North Carolina on the road. So my thought, what I think is popping up in my head most that's giving me confidence right now going into Boston College, of anything, is that the tackling was so much better against Miami. We noted just how leaky and how just it truly astonishingly bad the defense was against Bowling Green. It resulted in staff changes. Our headline was not the only one that said something about how truly terrible the defense was. And they made the changes, and I think I saw in our staff Slack that like the PFF grades for us were very, very good in the Miami game, like extremely good. I only caught that second half, but my eye test told me kind of the same thing. There's a lot of open field tackles happening that didn't happen against Bowling Green, and really against anybody else for that matter. So they've made leaps and strides in a very short amount of time. And Brent Key has not done anything in terms of like, what the heck was that kind of like coaching decisions either, which I think is that's a big win considering what we've seen that's given us wins.
Jack, we just saw possibly the most colossal coaching blunder in the history of coaching.
It wasn't us. And it
any
wasn't
sport.
Us. It wasn't us.
The bar's on the floor. I'm just giving you a hard time, but
anyways. So all that to say, I think at this point we have had, as we've said, the really high highs, the really low lows. Maybe it starts balancing out finally. I don't know, but regardless, things seem to be balancing no matter how it goes week after week, and it's come out in the record so far. So, my general feeling is okay. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if the ACC coastal chaos that's not really dead yet continues to reign in some form or fashion. What you got?
Yeah, I got a question for both of y'all. I'm trying to be a little positive here and put a spin on it. Anyone particularly this year pop out and surprise you? I mean, obviously, I would personally say this is a very basic answer. I was not expecting quite this from Haynes King, who has been pretty good. I was a big fan of what we saw to Zach Byron out of the stretch last year, but Haynes has been good. But any players that jump off the page for you that you want to highlight? I think there's certainly more than just the quarterback.
Kind of, I mean, obviously Haynes King, especially listening to the coaching staff talk about maybe kind of how maybe inexperienced he was and maybe how raw he was at Texas A&M. So the fact that he's really kind of come into his own has been, really like a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
I've also been super impressed with Eric Singleton as well. I mean, he had some clutch catches in that Miami game. And so
oh my gosh, there's
and he's just a freshman too. Yeah. So, I mean,
yeah,
very excited to see what he's going to do.
For sure. I was going to say there was one, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name that I definitely wanted to call out. And I don't know.
Jamal Haynes, the other Haynes?
No. Offensive line. Shoot. Man, it's been a week since I thought about this. I should have written it down. I was brainstorming some questions a little bit ago. Let me see if it comes to my mind. Freshman, offensive lineman. Dang.
I'll give you my name though.
Podcasting. My apologies.
Other highlights has been Kyle Kennard on the defensive side. He's had a lot of the key interceptions have come from him. He was really good in the tackling last week as well. He's been a solid force the entire way, which is huge to have, even with a rough game against Bowling Green for everybody. Having this guy is going to make a couple plays every game that can change a game as well. That's huge to have. That speaks a lot to our ability to have complete games as well. If we're going to have Haynes King play like Haynes King and have our duo of running backs be how they are and have a damn good wide receiver in Singleton, and then on the defensive side, have a guy that that name because you're going to know that guy's going to do a thing. That's huge. That allows a lot of possibilities.
Yep.
And this isn't who you were going to bring up,
by the way. But anyways, go ahead, Charles.
This isn't the offensive lineman that you were going to bring up, but I just got to shout out the local guy. Big props to Weston Franklin. He's a Wayne County kid. He's a Jessup guy. That's my alma mater.
Nice.
So I'm super pumped that he's doing big things in the offensive line there.
That's cool. The last person from my alma mater to come here and play sports, I believe, was Iman Shumpert. So good. And we'll talk about one of Jack's alma mater folks later in this.
Not even alma mater, podcast. just place of residence.
We're doing all right, I'd say, between the three of them, because Akshay always gets to talk about being from Milton and all the great football talent that they produce. But gotta give our guys some shine when we can, right?
That's right.
Who was your
guy? Weston Franklin?
No, Jake's guy.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, I remembered his name, Ethan McKinney.
Yes.
Yes, he's been, I believe, on some pretty good lists too. But anyways.
We'll be all right. So, yes, again, noon kick against Boston College. If you are coming to Atlanta, the game will be on ACC Network for those that will not be in Atlanta and all the traditional radio stuff as well. Let's move into the cross-country part of the podcast. We had a couple things here. We had the invited Texas. Is this Texas A&M, Jake? Florida A&M? What A&M is this?
It is Texas A&M.
The Texas version.
They were out in College Station for some running. Not as big of an invite as Lehigh, but still a big invite. I think it was 40 teams each, 39 teams each.
Gotcha.
Yeah. In terms of results, things, just going to call out that the men got 7th out of 39. Cross country is a little weird. You see a lot of schools that you're going, really? They're big in that? And also seeing LSU in like 27th is a little strange. But Tulane, Indiana, and the University of the Incarnate Word went 1 through 3 on the men's side. Devin Wade, John Higginbotham, and Charlie Smith finished 20th, 31st, and 55th. I usually just call out top 50 finishers, but Charlie Smith is a senior, and I believe that this is the first time we've ever mentioned him on the podcast, so I didn't want to not do that. For the women, they finished 12th. Grace Driscoll finished 26th. Mary Brady 43rd. The women ran a 6K. The men an 8K. And then I believe rounding out Tech's total finishers, everyone was in the top 125. And I think there's like 450 runners. So that's a pretty good spot to be. The ACC is kind of stacked. They'll go to the ACC championships next down in Tallahassee. So, might be a little odd down there, but they're doing well against, I guess, a more national selection of programs, including knocking off a number of Power Fives. One other thing I do want to note is that the women's teams 1 through 3 went Utah Valley, UCLA, and Boston College. And I cannot for the life of me remember finishing behind Boston College in just about any non-rev sport, maybe ever. So good job, BC. You're putting some together up there. So we'll see how it shakes out in I guess 2 weeks here at ACCs. But hey, it's at least something to watch for. Can BC put it together again?
For all the slander we've given them in the trivia section for how many times we have beaten them and how little they have done in ACC, that is kind of cool just to see for the health of them. I'm going to shout out Mary Brady because that is the only person I have seen come out of my hometown of Avondale Estates, Georgia, do a thing in like a notable collegiate or professional sport. I don't think we have any pros that have come out of Avondale. So this is really cool. Really cool to see for our tiny little town east of Atlanta. So yeah, as Jake said, they'll be in Tallahassee. That is October 27th. So in about 12 days, not this weekend, but the next. Swim and dive was at a school out east near some farms. The women lost 198 to 100, and the guys lost 189 to 109. Jake, who are the names that we should know from this meet?
The names to note from this meet. We called out Max Fowler after the FSU invite. He won both diving events there. He also won both diving events in Athens. So it seems that, the staff there kind of struck some gold. It's always nice to bank some points in the diving events. Ruben Lechuga, who I think is either a senior or a COVID fifth year, he finished third on the 1 meter and second on the 3 meter. So diving points. Good job. I don't know. As a long-time swimmer, I feel like everyone kind of, sometimes doesn't.
It was the part of the meet
divers
I didn't want there because that
just
made us stay at the meets longer. But they do actually contribute the points, so they got to be there.
And good on them. We've had a good streak of divers come through in the last couple of years, so that's good to see that continue. Other names to note: Niles Bogner got second in the 200 IM. Joao Caballero second in the 200 and 100 breast. Mert Kilavus second in the 1,000 free. Real weird to see him not winning dual meet 1,000 frees, but that's the rub. The folks out east are good at swimming, much to my great chagrin. Sabine Brayson won the 100 breast and 200 breast, so that was good to see. Mackenzie Campbell and Lindsay Merck both did well in the 200 fly. I noticed a couple of results pop up in recaps and in the results. It's like, Georgia Tech won the 400 free relays. No, they did not. The meet was so out of hand that UGA swam all those events exhibition. They did not win those events.
Oh, no.
They just were the only team that got points there. That's generally a thing you want to avoid against Power 5 competition. But if you flip that coin around, we did swim against Emory. I'd say probably the most successful school in D3, certainly over the last 10 years, but maybe in all of history of D3. And we did that to them in their home pool on Friday. But again, that is Georgia Tech, a D1 program with scholarships and all that, facing Emory. So, your mileage may vary, but they definitely bounced back from Wednesday very nicely on Friday. I'd say pretty thorough event for them over there in Atlanta, Druid Hills. I forget what we decided on calling that. If
the mail envelopes will say Atlanta, Georgia, but that is in the Druid Hills neighborhood. My Druid Hills High School, where I went to high school, is literally on Emory's campus, so all of that is walkable for me.
Nice.
I think it's technically.
I will say.
Good.
I was going to say. I will say. I don't want to forget to mention that swimming is really weird. They don't really have an ACC schedule. Certainly not required to swim many dual meets against ACC competition. They have their one ACC meet, I believe, this year coming up this week. It's at 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
It is, yes.
Go figure. Don't know why. It's probably on ACC Network Extra if you happen to be free at 11 a.m. on Thursday. Sorry, I think I said
Thursday.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
But Florida State, they're almost always on the schedule. So keep an eye out for that. That'll probably be a more accurate measuring stick than either thing that happened this past week.
Yeah, they'll be able to be fresh and do some proper dual meeting in that regard. Yeah, 11 on a Thursday is weird. I wonder if Florida State has a break or something that weekend and it worked for them to take it. I don't know. That's weird. I don't know.
It's a bus trip. It's a bus trip. You just got to hire a bus.
That's all you got to do. That is, yes. Of the two pools between Emory and Georgia, I swam in both, Emory is my favorite of the two of those pools by far.
I was gonna say I prefer Tech's to both of those, but if we're gonna throw FSU in the mix, the outdoor pool, 8 lanes, feels like spring break, even though it's February like third weekend. That was always a good
That's
trip.
pretty nice. That's pretty nice. I
But
didn't know that one.
anyways, that's beside the point. Jack, I think it's time for some podcast business.
Go ahead.
Yes. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is Georgia Tech's finest purveyor of Georgia Tech related apparel. They've got some old fashioned looking stuff. They've got some new fashion looking stuff and everything in between. We've talked about, shirts that support good causes, whether that's, NIL or, Clement's Kitchen with the Juniors Grill shirt. We can recommend all of that. Proud owners and wearers here. One thing I do want to shout out is remember to keep an eye on Twitter and emails and things like that. When Georgia Tech gets a nice ranked win, that usually means that something special is coming from Section 103. In our case last week, that was 17% off for a very limited time. But that should encourage you to go sign up for their communications to take advantage of things like that. As always, keep an eye on their polls for potential new designs, and those come and get released every once in a while as well. You can find them at section103.com and at section103 on Twitter. Jack, back to you.
I should have taken advantage of the sale when it was happening, but I did not. So I need them to beat North. I need them to beat North. I need North Carolina to drop to 25, and then we beat North Carolina for the 25% off discount. It'll be fantastic.
If Virginia somehow beat North Carolina, where do you think they would drop to?
Oh boy, that would be a lot of spots. That's for sure. It wouldn't be a few spots. They would be in the 20s, I think, by that point.
See, I feel like that's a level of UNC football discourse that we really haven't gotten to unlock yet this year. But I would like to be the one to give it to them.
We give them permission to lose to Virginia by far. Let's go to tennis to start up, because men's tennis, we hosted the ITA Regional tournament for whatever our region is. I wish I knew that. At Southeast. Okay, that seems obvious. Yeah. At the tennis center here. So, Jake, what happened with that?
Yeah, just a quick recap of scores. Obviously, with ITAs, lots of teams, lots of things. And they don't play as the team, so there's a lot of different things to follow. I tried to simplify it as much as possible. At the time I wrote this, they had not published a recap of the day's events. So I have these labeled current doubles, current singles, and other. In terms of people that were active at that time, Richard Biagiotti and Gabriel Brancatelli were playing. They're freshmen and a junior transfer, I believe, from Tennessee. Brancatelli is. They played into Sunday. There's a Saturday quarterfinal versus FAU that they won by an 8-3 margin. I don't believe that I saw an update there, but your guess is as good as mine. If they won, they'll play tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean today, by the time this podcast is released. Biagiotti was also playing singles on Sunday. He fell 6-3, 6-3 to Miguel Perez Pena. He had won twice on Saturday, including a win over Thomas Paulsol of Athens, which is always good to see. That was 6-2, 6-7. His singles win was 6-4, 6-4. We also had Krish Aurora, who's a freshman, playing in Saturday. He and Elias Shakri were playing doubles into Friday. Again, this started Thursday, so a couple days of wins there. Rohan Sakdev also played into Friday. In my cursory glancing, granted this wasn't the most thorough thing in the world, I haven't seen Marcus McDaniel, Keshav Chopra, or Andres Martin on any of the lines here, which is interesting because I believe.
Are you saying that they're still in Tunisia?
I don't know if they're in. Did they just go to GTL for the semester? This is my question. I gotta know. Or the Barcelona program or something like that. But yeah, so I don't know where they're at. They've won this in the past. So all that saying, I think my point there is really what I'm trying to get at, is that this team feels deeper than it has in the past. Might be a good one to keep an eye on. Their match against UGA when they have it at home is always super fun. I think that usually falls sometime close to MLK Day.
Should be at UGA this.
Out for that.
It should be at UGA this year.
On the road this year.
Yeah.
Okay. just goes to show my time's turning to jelly in my brain. There's too many sports results.
I only know it because I went to that this past year, and I got there right at first serve, and it was like full inside Ken Byers. So it was a sad day for it to be raining because they would have used all the space outside if they could use it.
Yeah. All that to say, they're keep an eye on them. But this team might be interesting. Watch. So this team might be interesting.
Yeah.
Keep a side eye at them. We'll see what happens once the other three get back in the mix between the freshmen and the transfers. They're looking pretty good. Not like UNC Wake Forest tennis levels of world beating type thing, but certainly one to keep an eye on.
I remember we did mention earlier this year during the pods that the recruiting seemed decently good. So hopefully this pans out. For the women, they did not play this past week. They have their ITA Regionals this coming weekend in Gainesville, Florida, assumedly at University of Florida. Also, who did not play this week, at least, well, not to the public, that is softball. They played some games. We have no idea what happened. I know Charles looked online. I know Jake looked online. We don't know what happened. We know they played something.
I can tell you with full faith and confidence that they played Emmanuel in a predetermined 10 innings. Yeah. That is all I can tell you.
That's all we got.
I was going to say, yes, the first line of the one thing that I could find too.
So, yeah. Did they win? Who knows? Did they lose? Who cares?
They may not have kept score for all we know. They may have just thrown the ball.
They actually replaced Blake Nelman with a pitching machine and just had batting practice. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to keep an eye out there. New staff and whatnot. Well, not fully new staff. Eileen Morales is back for, I believe, her fifth season. Jack,
something like somewhere in the 4 to 6 range. Yes.
However long I've been at Tech minus 1 year. That's how long.
I think that makes it 6.
Well, I guess I'm out now, but you know what I mean. Anyways, so I think that might be 6th year. Then all that said, softball will next be in action. Once the spring semester rolls around. I believe that takes us to golf.
I think it does. Yeah, it's getting a little cold, so now we're out of the outdoor base / softball season. Golf had a good week this past weekend here at the Golf Club of Georgia Collegiate Invitational at the Golf Club of Georgia, which is when it's at Event Tech hosts. They finished second behind Virginia, who shot 10 strokes better than Tech on the final day of competition. And yet another instance of Tech golf is right there until the very, very end. And someone pulls the rug out from under them. Tech finished 19th overall. They finished 19 under, and Virginia finished 25 under. East Tennessee State was the leader for the first 2 days of that. And then you also have Washington, Duke, Charlotte, USC, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Pepperdine all under par in the weekend. So a lot of the heavy hitters that we usually run into when it comes to NCAA tournament kind of stuff. And Wake Forest went from they were 3rd after day 1, and then were 13 over at the end. Tech had a B team there, and they just barely beat them. Jake, you want to go into the names?
Yeah, I will say just some color there. Georgia Tech, again, hosts of Golf Club of Georgia Collegiate. This is one of the back-to-back suburban Atlanta-based events they will be participating in. Of note on ETSU, sneaky good team for a mid-major golf program.
Yeah.
So not quite as off the wall as ETSU might lead you to believe. There, they are pretty regular face in the NCAA tournament. So nothing too crazy there. Also, Wake Forest, noted very good golf school. Don't know what happened there. In terms of Tech's names, Aiden Kramer was our top finisher. He finished tied for 9th, -5, much lower than other top finishing teams. I say much lower. 9th is still pretty good, but just kind of interesting, just seeing how much, I guess, bunching in the scorecard there was for Tech. Like I said, not anyone really running away with the field, but right behind Kramer, you had Crystal Lamprecht and Hiroshi Tai. They were tied for 14th, which sounds, oh my gosh, that's lower. Well, that's just a -4. They were 1 stroke behind Kramer. Bartley Forrester one stroke back of them, tied for 18th with 3 under. Among the B team, Andy Mao, he was 1 under, tied for 25th.
Nice.
Carson Kim was tied for 30th. They were even, finishing above Aiden Tran, who was 4 over and tied for 49th. But all in all, I'd say a pretty good showing. And I don't know. I feel like we don't see Mao and Kim too much in the starting lineup. They're newer, younger. all that. So good to see them getting some play against the pretty stacked lineup. I'd say that was here between ACC schools. I mean, Pepperdine, classic big golf team, Tennessee, Duke, Washington, Southern Cal. It was a big weekend. We usually get a lot of big names out to Alpharetta for that event.
That's a good tournament. Charles, I have your first bit of Georgia Tech trivia. Which of these names on this shot sheet is currently the number 1 ranked player in the PGA University rankings?
Oh, Lord. I literally just saw this on Twitter, formerly, or I was going to say Twitter, formerly known as X, in a few years.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I saw it, but I don't know.
It is
Jack, you're so mean.
It's a litmus test here. Christo Lamprecht, who is going to be destroying the U.S. in the President's Cup in the next couple of years. I swear, he is just killing it on the international golf scene. But yeah, he is now. Jake, we have a number 1 Georgia Tech player in an individual sport. This is a real thing. We did it. We did it. We can retire the podcast now.
I don't know about that, but okay. So reading the schedule doesn't usually make for interesting content, but I would like to point out that it looks like the date has shifted on either the Cypress Point Classic or the East Lake Cup, because they're both listed as being happening at the same time from Monday, October 30th through, I guess East Lake Cup goes through Wednesday, November 1st. But yeah, some overlapping schedule, fixture congestion, if you will, to borrow a soccer term that I've never actually said out loud before. I don't know what's going on with that because the East Lake Cup, which is not played at East Lake this year because of some renovations, was supposed to feature, I know Tech, but I believe the other 3 schools were Florida, Florida State, and UNC, meaning last year's Final Four. Yeah. It's going to be on the Golf Channel. So I would very much like for that to still exist, but I really have no idea. But again, the other point there being Cypress Point is at Cypress Point in Pebble Beach, California. So I kind of wanted both of those events to happen. Golf Channel, I'm a little greedy. I want to see Tech actually play on TV because that's a little bit rare. But
I think they're still going to put this on TV because they're now playing this at the Atlanta Athletic Association, otherwise known as the place where the PGA Championship has been held. So they are still getting a course that can handle the television side of things.
But I would hate for them to have to split the lineup or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously they'd probably send like an A team and a B team like they did this weekend, but just very, very interesting to see those kind of line up.
Right, yeah.
I have got no answers there. This is all pure speculation, but.
Right. I just found there is a Golf Channel article that came out in July about all this. They're gonna they're gonna have the stroke play on the 30th, broadcast from 3 to 6 p.m. live, and on Tuesday as well, which is gonna be match play semifinals, and then on Wednesday, November 1st, will be the match play finals and consolation, also from 3 to 6. So you got the mid-afternoon window to watch that. The field will consist of, on the men's side, Florida, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and North Carolina, and on the women's side will be Wake Forest, USC, Stanford, and Texas A&M. So yes, all the heavy hitters.
So stacked.
That is, you get both sides of it. This could be a really cool thing to see. Sucks they won't be at East Lake because otherwise I would have just gone to it. Actually, I assume I could have gotten in there, but alas, that's what we got. Any final thoughts before we move on to volleyball?
Jack could just get into East Lake. This is what I'm learning.
That's
what
just
are we playing? That's my question.
No, it's not that. I would assume as a media thing, not as I do not have the pull to go play East Lake yet. I am not at that level of knowing people. So maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Me neither. I'll stick to the munis in South Atlanta.
I love the munis are the way to go. Let's go to volleyball here. This was a big weekend in a lot of different ways. I want to talk about first, just want to recap what happened with Florida State before we get into our thoughts here. Florida State, so we're back at home, 4-game home stretch in O'Keefe. Friday night, we played Florida State. We won 3-2 after being down 2-1, and that final set was a 16-14 win. So we went down to, we had to play an extra point to get that one done. This Florida State win had a lot of tech records and just newness things happening. Because we played 5 sets, the stats get padded a little bit, and things we haven't seen happen before happen. Eloise Suarez, who started at center for the third or fourth straight game, in place of Bella D'Amico, set the Georgia Tech modern scoring assist record with 59 assists because they don't play. What was the old scoring style? I'm forgetting the name.
rally
Rallies,
style.
yes, your rally
Basically,
style.
you had to control the ball in order to score a point. Now they side out.
Yep. So yes, that. So yeah, 59 assists broke that record. Tamara Otene had another 2020 double-double, and she only was like the 10th or so person to ever record one when she did that at Virginia. She's now the only Tech player to ever have back-to-back 2020, 20 kill, 20 dig double-doubles. There are only 4 other people at Tech in Tech history with multiple 2020 double-doubles. That's Chris Omaneski with 4, Wendy Malins with 3, Maya Pashali with 3, and then Lynette Moster has 3. Michaela Dowd, before Otene's at Virginia last week, had the previous one in 2018, also against Virginia. Pimentel at libero had 29 digs. That was her career high. She is now over 1,000 digs in her career. Larissa Mendez hit 21 kills, her career high in her young Georgia Tech career. This was Tech's first ever instance of back-to-back 5-set wins since 2019, so it's been almost 4 seasons since we last did that. That was a lot.
Jack, I need to cut you off here.
I ran out of things to
listed all
say.
these amazing things, and that does not jive with
mine,
and I know yours.
I was gonna get there.
Yours opinion of that game.
I was gonna get there. It was a very for all the. That's why I said there was a lot of stat padding, because to the eye and to the heart, it was not that positive. When it was all said and done, it truly was not.
I would agree. I'm trying to be positive with this. The better team won that game, but not the team that played better.
Yep.
Is the phrase I'd kind of used to cope with how I process that match. I don't think Tech played particularly well for the first about 3.5 sets, and then back against the wall. Something's got to change. They started stretching points that went longer. They were not winning long rallies in the first or second and into the third. To go down 2-1, which is probably important clarification. Tech and Florida State traded the first 2 sets. Florida State went up 2-1. Georgia Tech trails by a few points about midway through the 4th. They win a long rally. They were stretching it out, playing good defense. And O'Keefe came alive. I know you know the point I'm talking about. I think it was to go 17-16 or tie at 16-16.
Yeah, I think it was the 16-16 because we had a 3. That was the third point in a row of a 6-point run where we finally got back into it. Yeah.
Yep. I was gonna say I was with people who had never been to a Georgia Tech volleyball match, and they were kind of like unimpressed the first 3.5 sets, and the crowd came to life, and they're like, "Oh, this is what you were talking about." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is what it's like when they're playing well." And I think they wrote a little bit of the energy, a little bit of just laying it out there to get a couple more points, and that makes a difference in a set. We'll get to Miami in a second. I would argue that's one thing that may have been missing against Miami, but at least as things stood Friday evening after that match, Tech was more or less atop the ACC in a tie, but atop still with games still to be played against Pitt and Louisville, whom they were tied with, and having won the season series against Florida State, i.e., thereby saying they controlled, at least on some level, their own destiny. I would no longer say that is true today. Again, we'll get to Miami in just a second, but at least after Florida State, it felt like a win where they, maybe figured some stuff out, but your mileage may vary. And I don't know. I feel like there was a lot out there. I'm not going to disparage any referees. I think there's a lot of borderline calls that happen in any game, but I am going to say that whatever they did to change the challenge rules, they need to change it back, because that game became borderline unwatchable with the challenge result challenge 8-10 minute long affair between FSU and Michelle that involved multiple yellow cards, lots of screaming, and just standing around in confusion, or at least put the replay on the board. Like it just, like you have a compelling product and one that makes for pretty good TV and is pretty entertaining. People are into the game, pretty invested in it, and it just slams it to a halt.
Yes, the challenging part was weird. There was a little counter challenge that happened by Michelle where Tech had Miami challenged the call. It got revert. It was a Tech point. that got reversed to a Miami point, and then Michele challenged and then got put back as a Tech point. On the same point that had happened, they challenged 2 different items of the point, and I guess they just didn't look at the whole point. I don't know what it was. It was so weird to see. The point, now back, I keep saying point. The score that got the crowd back into it, really, there was DeAndre Pierce had I call it a dunk shot when he had the free ball right at the net, and it came after Pimentel nearly hit the scorer's table for a dig, and that was the point that put Tech ahead 17-16 in that third set as part of a 6-point run, and then they managed to hold that lead and won that set 25-18 on a very long run, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
The counter challenge came at 21-17, I believe, later in that set. And they did pretty well in the 5th set as well. They got an early had a 4-0 lead and burned both of Florida State's timeouts because Bertolino's serve was on fire in that 5th set to start the 5th set with back-to-back aces, which was huge. And then that Florida State tied it back up, but Tech had a very critical 2-point gap near the end and had it tied at 13-13. And then Otane hit a ball out at 14 to give Florida State match point, and then came right back, hit a massive kill to tie it at 14, and then finished it off from there with Bertolino and et al. So the big thing here, Jake, and that's what I wrote in my recap today, is the lack of Liv Mogridge is killing us in a big way.
Yeah.
That was a huge part of when I talked with Michele last week. She noted that Liv is huge when it comes to serving. They want a lot of serve points with Liv at the line, and that's a big thing that they've had to really change their rotations with her not being there. Elizabeth Patterson comes in and spot serves a couple times a set now with her rotations between Pierce. Pierce doesn't serve, they just don't have her serve right now. They have Patterson serve for her instead, so they've got some funky libero swaps going on. DeAndre Pierce is just small. She's got power, but she's just small. So if you don't time up her slide sets perfectly, it doesn't work. Anna Bozy, for the lack of what we've seen, just kind of runs around. She has not been an impact player at all. I made the comparison in our Slack to Miguel Berry, which, if you know Atlanta United stuff, or have heard me on the Atlanta United podcast, Miguel Berry is not a guy I would say is good at soccer. He's just kind of there, and not much else. Bozy is better at this than Miguel Berry is at professional soccer. I'll give her that at least. But it hasn't been, in terms of the output that Liv Mogridge gave us in terms of being our primary blocker and being our tallest person out there, being a person that we can do the quick sets to, akin to how we did with Morissette and Moss last year, that part of the game's just gone. None of our players are able to replicate that, and not even they can't even patch it together, which has made the offense so much more predictable between Bertolino, Mendez, and Otane. And that just means we're going to go to the pins every time. We're going to go to the pins. They've done a lot more back sets to have people coming in from the back row. That's happened a little bit more now because got to do something else. And Callie Engelman's shown up because she's the tallest of the middle blockers that hasn't really played so far. She came off an ACL last year and only played once, and now has played in 4. She's played in the 6 sets now, and she's played a role, but she's not all the way to Mogridge. So
yeah,
of everything that I've seen, that's been a huge factor because that completely changes the dynamic. There's a gaping hole in the middle now. You can kind of just hit right through it. And for teams that are competent like Miami and Florida State should have beaten us. They really should have. And Miami just took it full advantage.
Tech only had 5 blocks in a 5-set match.
We had 5 blocks against Florida State. We had 7 today. So, I mean, an improvement in terms of per set, but still just not really terribly effective. It's not a part of the game that is reliably going to get us points or keep us in it. So that Florida State win is huge because I think we're going to drop a little. I think we're going to drop a few ranking points or spots for sure after losing to Miami and a sweep. That was our first time we got swept all year. We at least had gotten a set in every of our other losses, and we are now in 4th place after losing today to Miami. I don't think there's that much to say about the Miami game besides that Larissa Mendez was not good. She had a negative hit percentage after 2 sets and finished even at 0-0-0. Everything just played down a level. The energy was not the same rate. Students don't really come to O'Keefe on Sundays. I am now more discovering. I don't know why I didn't know this ahead of time, but yeah, the student crowd that was there on Friday was not there on Sunday. That absolutely, I think, was a contribution to in some of those big moment points we had, because we had a couple good runs that could have gotten us sets, but there was not the crowd backing for that. There just simply wasn't.
Sorry, you can't blame students for the team not executing.
I will blame them for there not being an atmosphere. I will absolutely blame the students for there not being a good enough atmosphere. We know that is a critical part of our home court advantage. And
as somebody who spent 5 years trying to get kids to go to non-Friday night games, I have seen how tough it is to get people to go, and I appreciate the people who actually show up for that. So that's where I'll leave that. Being an engineering student, Georgia Tech is very hard, and sometimes you need your Sunday in the middle of the day.
I do remember I was talking with a friend. I was talking with a friend at Porch Fest who's a student right now. They have 3 exams this week, so I think this is a pretty big exam.
It's midterm season.
Yeah. So that's a big thing. And then beyond that, we just need Mogridge back. That's a huge thing. She is not wearing any kind of obvious bracing on her ankle. That we think it's an ankle thing that's currently bothering her right now, and she still is like around. Like she's still standing up for the whole match. She's still doing the dances on the side and stuff like that. So she's not down for the count or anything like that. If anything, you want to make sure she is healthy enough to where she's not at a risk to re-injure that foot, because she is going to be necessary at the end of the season. So if you can get her fresh for November and into the NCAA tournament time, assuming we make it that far, that's much more important, I would say, when you can maybe get through the Duke, North Carolina, just the lesser part of the ACC schedule while you have the time. She was also very vocal in the huddles. There was one of the last timeouts of the game. She was the primary person talking to the team. It wasn't anybody else. So she's definitely taken on a big leadership role in that sense, which is very good to see. I had my thoughts about the refs today. Also, they were not good. There was 3 yellow cards today. Miami got 2 of them. We got 1.
Was it Claudio?
No, it was everybody. It was a team-wide thing.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was gonna say, if it's Claudio, that's kind of his thing.
He got close though. He got real close. So this is the part that was the most infuriating. It was in the final set, or in the third. Oh, I got my wrong notes up. At 23-23, 23-23. No, at 24-24. Sorry. Tech was out of challenges. Kalia had been unsuccessful twice, and Pimentel got called for whatever the violation is when you cross in the other part of the other side of the court. But your feet have to cross in. You can actually roll in there, but your feet have to cross in, and her feet were nowhere close, And they called her on it, and they didn't have any challenges left. There was a team yellow card. A second yellow means the other team gets a point, which is how we got our 22nd point of the set. And Pimentel, Claudio, and Kalia had to do everything in their body to hold back against the refs. They were gonna blow a gasket so hard, and I feel like it kind of was.
I saw her kick something on the stream at some point in there.
It may have been a chair. I don't know. So I wouldn't be maybe a ball. I don't know. I think that was kind of we lost the next point, but I do think that the fact that there was such a bad call that kind of flustered the team, and Otene was not ready for the next serve, and she just casually tossed it out and never gave us a shot. So all that to say, we're 15-3 now, 6-2 in the ACC. We're 4th now at this point. Pitt, Florida State, and Louisville all won today. They are the 3 1-loss teams at this point. So that is going to be how that's going to go, or that's going to be the standings going into Friday when we play home against Duke, and then Sunday is home against North Carolina, who both have losing records in the ACC. Don't want to say that's going to guarantee us anything, especially in the current state of this team. But if we're going to play those teams, if we're going to be shorthanded, those are probably the teams you want to face on the schedule. So that's where that's going to land. For now, I will be there. If you see me, say hi. All right, Charles, we're going to loop you back in here for the ACC tasting menu in terms of, we finally have some games, but we had 5. I think we had 5 games last week and 5 again here in the ACC. So let's start with Pitt is traveling to Wake Forest. Wake is a 2.5-point favorite. Jake, what you got?
Yeah, I don't know where Pitt's performance last week came from. I watch a lot of Louisville football these days, mostly out of having to converse with my family about it. I don't know where that came from. Also, I will note that there's a couple games that at the time didn't have lines and over-unders listed. Those are now up. So in addition to Wake being favored by 2.5, the line has moved down. They're only favored by 1. The over-under is 48. Not sure how I feel about the over-under. Not much of a better guy myself, but Wake by 1, I feel like that's fairly reasonable for them, particularly in their own building.
Sure thing. Charles, we talked about this game earlier. Virginia at UNC. Well, in terms of percentage points, what would you emotionally give Virginia a chance at winning this game?
1%.
That seems accurate.
I mean, stranger things have happened in college football. Stranger things will happen. I think North Carolina is just kind of on a roll right now. But as far as the covering the spread of 24.5, I say Virginia covers.
Okay.
I was going to say big lines like that usually scare me. So I think I'd tend to agree.
That's a lot on that line. That is a lot. I think you made the right call there. Excuse me. All right. Duke at Florida State. Not the possibly like one of the ACC games of the year we thought was going to be one of them, but here we are. This is it. They got the 7:30 ABC kick. Florida State favored by 13 at home, Jake.
Yeah. It's on ABC. It's at night. I think Duke's pretty good. I think what it comes down to is the Riley Leonard factor, specifically having or lacking him. I know that a couple different sources now that I've looked at, in addition to the one that we've seen in here, has the line, -13, -13.5. I think that's certainly doable by Florida State. I think this game really, really does hinge on Duke's offense being healthy. They won by a significant margin last night, but weren't necessarily all that dominant on offense. I think is a fair way to put it. You guys can take issue with that however you may see fit. I am not as much of a fan of their offense without Leonard, though. Over under 49. If Florida State gets on a roll, even if Duke scores a couple, I think that's a pretty makeable target, though.
If this game was in Durham, that would be very, very interesting. But alas, it is not. Charles, you get the last one. Clemson at Miami, which is, I guess, by legacy, the game of the year. But this is not legacy. This is reality. What do you got here?
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of hard to determine really what this Clemson team is. I mean, I guess I'm still thinking like Clemson 2015, but that's not reality currently. I think Clemson is still maybe a technically sound team. So I really don't know. And at the flip, though, Miami is seemingly like a really solid team, but then you drop 2 in a row to, Tech and a really good North Carolina team on the road. I can kind of go either way with this. In my quick research, I saw 2 very different lines, both favoring Clemson. One was 9.5 and one was 2. Yeah, I'm going to say Miami outright wins this game.
Yeah. I mean, it's in their building. They've got something to play for too. I mean,
and I'm really basing that off of,
they might lose the team if that happens,
Yeah.
And I'm basing this off really like the rush defense. In a very broad stroke, I think if you can stop Will Shipley, then you have a very good chance of winning the ball game.
Mm-hmm.
And Miami's rush defense has actually been pretty solid this year. Mm-hmm. So I think Miami can do it. I think give me the Canes.
Clemson's just got to hope that Miami has a kneel down situation and they will win. That's all. That's how that works. This is how football is now in the Mario Cristobal era.
Everyone's going to pay attention to that from him forever now. And
I saw
the
Falcons had the Commanders just had to kneel down against the Falcons. I'm like, but what if you don't? And I'm like, oh wait a second, they know how to do this. This isn't going to happen a second time. They would never in the NFL. Sickos picks of the week. Jake Charles, I forgot to offer you one. So if you have a super sickos pick, think of it now. Jake, what you got?
So I feel like Charlotte versus going to ECU. ECU probably one of the better natural fan bases left in the AAC, just in terms of vibes and turnout and quality football, baseball. It's just an interesting little program. And Charlotte versus ECU could low-key be one of the more interesting regional rivalries that happens in the AAC now. I wouldn't call it a rivalry yet. I don't think they would either. But they're both 1-5. They're kind of terrible. But in terms of like anxiety around staffs and Charlotte being a newcomer to the AAC, ECU never kind of taking that step to the top tier that I think a lot of people thought they might do when the Big East imploded. I don't know. I just think there's some good AAC like current versus future vibes here. I think there's some regionality to it, and they're both 1-5, which I feel like is very much a sicko type thing to tune in for.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I picked the game that sounds like airport names: Florida International versus Sam Houston. That's it. That's it. Just because they sound like airports. They're not airports either. They just sound like airports.
There's a Florida Keys International, and there's 2 Houstons, but I don't know if there's specifically a Florida International and a Sam Houston. So I'll give you that. I respect the grind there.
There you go. I don't know anything else about the game, despite the fact they both are in Conference USA, which I didn't know either of them were in Conference USA either. So, Charles, do you have any? If it doesn't have to be college football, do you have any sicko things that would register on the spectrum?
A very quick glance here at next week's schedule. The only thing that I can kind of just quickly grab onto, we have an 0-6 Nevada traveling to a 3-4 San Diego State.
Oh dear.
And I still think of San Diego State with like the super cool helmet and
yes.
the running back who got drafted probably like 4 or 5 years ago now. Rashad Penny, I think. I don't know what his name is, but he was a really good running back, got drafted. And you know what? Just for kicks, the only Nevada game I've watched all year was the Fresno State, and they didn't look that bad. So why not? Give me Nevada. Give me the Wolfpack. I guess upsetting San Diego State at a crisp 9 p.m. this weekend.
Amazing. Rashad Penny was the most recent guy. I assume we all know. Well, Marshall Faulk is not their career rushing leader, actually. It is Donnell Pumphrey, who played from 2013 to 2016. He finished with 6,400 career yards. Marshall Faulk only played 3 years, so that's an asterisk there, and fewer games. It's the 90s. He finished with 4,700 yards. So, San Diego State, he does have all the single game rushing records, though, as you could guess there. So there's your San Diego State history section of the podcast. Let's go finish up with some trivia. Jake, what do you got for us?
Yes, for those listening, I usually leave this bit blank and I fill it out on the fly right before, so that way no one gets any inclination, any cheating. Not that you could do it, because most of this data is very hard to actually go and source. But today is going to be baseball themed because I feel like, well, we really didn't even talk about the fall exhibition, which I realize now.
That did happen, didn't it?
It did happen. Charles, did you watch any of that? Do you see any of that, or not really?
It was not broadcast anywhere. It was not on the radio anywhere. I followed a forum and the stats broadcasts. That is what I did.
I was following the From the Rumble Seat Slack once I figured out there was no 91.1 stream of it. So, but anyways, it's going to be baseball themed. I was like, oh, why is baseball on my mind? Completely forgot to put an entry in there. We'll talk about it next week. It's fall ball. There'll be more opportunities. That being said, today's question has to do with Georgia Tech baseball and its run differential. This is a different aspect of this data set that we're looking at. Usually we talk about wins and losses and coaches and things like that. All time, Georgia Tech has scored 6,837 more runs than they have let in. Who do they have the highest score run differential all time against in composite?
Oh, interesting. Who have we been beating up for decades now? It feels like
number two shocked me. Number 2 shocked me, but number 1 did not shock me.
Okay, so it's someone we have definitely played a lot for many years that we've been better than for many years.
Yes.
Okay.
Charles, you can feel free to chime in whenever too.
Oh boy. I'm gonna give my initial answer is Clemson.
Jack, I want to be nice here, but you really could not have been much more wrong than that. We have negative 103 runs against Clemson all time. They are our 5th most beaten uppingest on us of the other teams. The school out east is number 1 at -221. Florida State at -202. Florida and Auburn and Clemson round out the top 5 with the Atlanta Braves at number 6. Fun fact.
But
yeah,
college baseball is not my forte. If you couldn't guess.
Sorry, not to just go off.
Now I know. Now I know.
Now you know. Charles, you got to guess for number 1.
Georgia Southern.
Oh, they're number 3. You were real close.
Ooh.
Let's say these two teams don't like each other very much. They have the same abbreviation. It's Georgia State. We have outscored Georgia State by 537 runs all time. Maryland, I was surprised to see, was at number 2, 470, but I suppose they were a somewhat cold weather school playing in a warm weather conference for a long time, which certainly probably didn't do them many favors, but they've been good the last few years. So there's my bias there. Rounding out your top 5 are Duke, which we have outscored by 429, and Mercer with 396. Also note, I didn't realize we play Rutgers enough times in history to have outscored them by 302 runs. And then Georgia Tech has also been historically good against Virginia Tech and quite a few other ACC opponents. I was surprised to see just how big of a delta there was for NC State, Wake Forest as well, and Vanderbilt, who I guess back in the old days wasn't the Vanderbilt baseball program that we know today. Do you guys have any ones that you want to ask about or anything like that? But because that's really all I got there. But yeah,
I feel like that was too obvious of an answer for me to not get at the same time. I should have thought baseball is very local. You play your local teams much more than the other sports, so. That should have been obvious by picking the most local.
I just found a really interesting one.
Okay.
Georgia Tech has a negative run differential against both a negative 12 run differential against both the Cleveland Indians, Guardians now, and Cleveland State. Go figure.
Okay.
That's weird. I feel like that's weird.
So we need to play the Guardians to just clarify which Cleveland is better. If you take this measurement stick.
There you
go. Official measurement sticks out there. Of course. Oh boy. Okay.
Anywho.
Well, I think that wraps it up. Charles, thank you so much for hanging out with us for what ended up going much longer than I think we thought it was going to be. But we're really excited to have you on staff here. And we'll definitely have you on again once we get closer to softball and baseball season.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. And as everyone listening knows, you can find us at FromTheRumbleSeat.com. Signs of the Southland is From the Rumble Seat's premier and only podcast. You can find us online. We post articles with really just about every type of tech content that you can look for. But check us out there. You can email us at FromTheRumbleSeat@gmail.com. You can find us at Twitter at FTRSblog, at JakeGrant98 is where you can find me. Jack's at Jack Nicholas. Charles, you could plug yourself if you want or not. I didn't really think this through.
Charles will be available on From the Rumble Seat very soon.
Right.
Anyways, sorry. Back to our regular scheduled program. You can find Section 103 at Section 103 on Twitter and Section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. You can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.